I was betrayed. My husband left me for his pregnant mistress. My mother-in-law called me a gray mouse. And I spent 2 years caring for my dying father-in-law while they made plans for his inheritance. At the notary's office, I saw their triumphant faces. 8 million, an apartment in disrepair, a business. They were already dividing everything in their heads. But when the notary read the will, their world collapsed, and mine was just beginning. Vladimir Petrovich left me everything, every penny, every square meter, and the letter that turned my life upside down. Now I know what true freedom is and why. Sometimes losing everything means finding yourself. Hello, dear listeners. I'm glad to welcome you. I present to you a new interesting story. Enjoy listening. Alexandra Mikhailovna Sokolova froze in front of the massive door of the notary's office on Tverskaya Street, unable to bring herself to cross the threshold. Her hand froze on the cold brass handle, as if rooted to the metal. Everything inside her was clenched with a premonition of something inevitable. She demanded that she turn around, walk away, not open this damned door. But she took a deep breath of the frosty Moscow air and pushed the door open with determination. The first thing she noticed was Nikolai Vladimirovich. Her husband was seated on the leather sofa in the reception area, casually leaning back, as if he were in his own living room on Ostazenka Street and not in a government institution. Next to him sat a girl of about 12 years old in a tight burgundy dress that accentuated her rounded belly. Alexandra stopped dead in her tracks, feeling the ground slipping from under her feet. "And here you are, deigning to show up," her mother-in-law hissed. Elizaveta Sergeyevna rose from her chair with the air of an offended empress. Elizaveta Sergeyevna Sokolova always had a way of making Alexandra feel like something unpleasant on the sole of her expensive Italian shoes with just one glance from her cold gray eyes. "I hope you don't think you're entitled to anything after all this," her mother-in-law added with an icy smile. Alexandra remained silent. The words caught somewhere in her throat, forming a painful lump. Her husband's pregnant mistress is here. At the announcement of her father-in-law's will. How absurd. Victoria, is this the same Alexandra? The girl looked her up and down with undisguised curiosity, like she was a museum exhibit. My God, Nikolai, you really lived with that gray mouse for 10 years. Now I understand why you left for me. Nikolai didn't even deign to glance at Alexandra. He was scrolling through his phone, as if his ex-wife didn't exist at all, as if she were transparent, invisible, insignificant. Sit down already, he muttered, without looking up from the screen. The notary will be out soon. Alexandra sank into a chair by the window, away from them, trying to make herself as inconspicuous as possible. She was shaking with humiliation, pain, and the inability to understand how she had ended up in this nightmarish situation. Just a month ago, she had sat at her dying father-in-law's bedside in his apartment, getting his hair done, holding his withered hand, reading Chekhov and Bunin aloud to him when he could no longer hold a book himself. They had talked about life, about regrets, about what was truly important in this world. "You're the only one who's left," Vladimir Petrovich Sokolov whispered, squeezing her hand with his cold fingers in those last days. "Thank you, my daughter." She cried then, cried because this man, almost a stranger by blood, had given her more warmth and understanding in the last 2 years than her own husband had given her in their entire 10 years of marriage. "Lord, how long can I wait?" Victoria impatiently tapped her stiletto heel on the parquet floor. "I have morning sickness, I can't be nervous." "Be patient, honey." Nikolai finally tore himself away from the phone and patted her on the back with a protective gesture. "It's a formality. Now we'll get everything formalized and start a new life. We'll set up a nursery in my father's apartment. Can you imagine?" Alexandra clenched her fists until they hurt. "Don't cry. Not now. Not here, not in front of them." She looked out the window at the gray December sky over Moscow and remembered how Nikolai stopped noticing her 3 years ago. At first it was little things, forgotten birthdays, cancelled weekend plans, coldness in bed. Then he started staying late at work. Disappearing on business trips for weeks at a time, she remained silent. She remained silent and endured. Because that's what her mother did, that's what her grandmother did, because she was ashamed to admit, even to herself, that the marriage had fallen apart. When Vladimir Petrovich fell ill with cancer, Nikolai visited his father at Botkin Hospital, once and only once during his 6-month treatment. Alexandra went every day, delivered packages, made arrangements with the doctors, and sat by his side after the surgery and chemotherapy. And when the patient was discharged home, she moved in with her father-in-law to care for him. He's been watching him around the clock. Are you crazy? Nikolai was yelling then in their apartment on Kutuzovsky Prospect. You're leaving my home for a sick old man. This is your father, she answered quietly. He needs help. We'll hire a nurse. He needs a family. He slammed the door and never raised the topic again. Alexandra realized then that her absence was convenient for her husband. Very convenient. Vladimir Petrovich was a different person. He thanked her for every little thing, took an interest in her life, asked about her dreams and plans. When Alexandra admitted that she always wanted to open her own business, a small store of beautiful things for the home, he listened with such attention as if she were talking about conquering Everest. What's stopping you? He asked one evening when the pain had subsided a little. There's no money, and Nikolai is against it. He doesn't say it seriously. The old man shook his head. Alexandra, my daughter, life is too short to live it according to someone else's scenario. The door of the notary's office opened, and a man of about 50 in a formal dark blue suit came out. Good afternoon, please get everyone through, he said in an official tone. They filed into the office. Victoria demonstratively took Nikolai's arm, as if marking territory. Elizaveta Sergeyevna walked in first, casting a disparaging glance at Alexandra. The office was furnished with heavy dark wood furniture. At a massive desk, the notary arranged the documents in folders. Alexandra sat on the edge of the chair, ready to sink into the ground. So, the notary began, putting on his gold-rimmed glasses. We have gathered here for the announcement of the last will and testament of Vladimir Petrovich Sokolov. I, Notary Maxim Andreevich Belov, have personally certified this will. The document has been drawn up in full compliance with the law, in the presence of witnesses, and of the testator's sound mind and memory. Let's hurry up, the mother-in-law grimaced. We all understand that the apartment will go to me as the legal spouse, and the business and income will go to my son. The notary looked over his glasses. I'm afraid you're mistaken, Elizaveta Sergeyevna. What? She sat up straighter in her chair. What are you talking about? Allow me to read the will, Belov continued calmly. Alexandra stared out the window, not listening. She didn't care. She didn't come here for money or apartments. She came because it was the right thing to do, because it was the last thing she could do for the man who had been kind to her. I, Vladimir Petrovich Sokolov, being of sound mind and memory, bequeath all my property, namely, a 3-room apartment at 12 Prechestenka Street, apartment 45. This is my apartment, Elizaveta Sergeyevna added. We bought it together 30 years ago. A country house in the village of Nikolina Gora. Dad's house, Nikolai nodded. There's a business nearby, it'll be convenient. 50% stake in a limited liability company, Stroymaster. Excellent. Nikolai rubbed his hands. I've been wanting to get things in order for a long time. The bank accounts total about 8 million rubles. Victoria gasped and squeezed Nikolai's hand. Also, a Toyota Camry with a state registration plate. Yes, we know all that, his mother-in-law interrupted. Get to the main point. To each his own. Does it go to you? The notary paused, took off his glasses, and looked directly at Alexandra. I bequeath all of the above-mentioned property to Alexandra Mikhailovna Sokolova, my daughter-in-law. There was a silence so thick that it seemed the air had turned to cotton wool. Alexandra slowly turned her head to the notary. "What?" she breathed out. "It's impossible," Elizaveta Sergeyevna shrieked, jumping up from her chair. "It's a fake, a deception. She forced him, took advantage of a helpless old man." Mom was right. Nikolai also jumped up. Father couldn't do it. He was ill and didn't understand what he was doing. "I assure you," Notary Vladimir Petrovich replied calmly. He understood his actions perfectly well. The will was drawn up 3 months before his death, during a period when he was fully capable. This is evidenced by the doctor's reports and witness testimony. "I will appeal," the mother-in-law screamed. "I will sue. My apartment, my money." Andriusha. Victoria turned pale. "But what about us? And the child? You said that your father had a ton of money, that we would live happily ever after." "Shut up," he snapped. "Not now." Alexandra couldn't move. 8 million rubles. An apartment on Prechestenka, a house on Nikolina Gora. Business, that's unrealistic. It can't be. "But that's not all," the notary continued, taking an envelope from his folder. Vladimir Petrovich left a letter which he asked to be read after the will was read. "With your permission, read it already," Elizaveta Sergeyevna barked. "I want to know what this snake told him." The notary opened the envelope and unfolded several pages covered with writing. Alexandra recognized Vladimir Petrovich's handwriting, large, sweeping, with characteristic flourishes. "My dear Alexandra," Belov began to read, "if you hear these words, it means I'm gone. I hope you're not too upset. I've lived a long life, and the last 2 years have been the brightest thanks to you." Alexandra caught her breath. "My son, my wife, and the girl Nikolai cheated on you with are probably sitting here right now. Yes, I knew everything, and I'm ashamed that I raised such a person." Nikolai turned white. "Alexandra, in these 2 years I've gotten to know you better than in all the previous 8 years of our acquaintance. You looked after me not for money, not out of a sense of duty. You did it from the bottom of your heart. You read to me, cooked my favorite dishes, just sat next to me when it was painful. You became the daughter I never had." Alexandra covered her face with her hands. Tears flowed through her fingers. "Elizaveta." The notary raised his voice, and the mother-in-law shuddered. "You have been cold to me for the last 20 years. We lived in the same apartment like neighbors. When I got sick, you never came to the hospital, you said you couldn't stand the sight of sick people. And when I returned home, you offered to send me to a hospice. You don't deserve a penny of what I've earned." Elizaveta Sergeyevna opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. "Nikolai, my son, I hoped that you would grow up differently, that you would be an honest, decent man. But you betrayed your wife, you didn't just leave, that would have been fair. You cheated on her for years, lied to her, humiliated her, and all the while you continued to take advantage of her kindness, her concern for our family. You came to me in recent months only to find out if I had registered everything in your name. You didn't ask how I was feeling. You were only interested in money." Nikolai sat, gritting his teeth. His fists were clenched so tightly that his knuckles were white. "As for you, the girl whose name I don't even want to pronounce." The notary nodded towards Victoria. "You destroyed someone else's family. I hope you had fun, but you won't get my son's money, because he doesn't have them." "What?" Victoria jumped up. "Nikolai, what does he mean?" "Sit down," he hissed. "Alexandra, my dear girl," the notary's voice softened. "I'm leaving you everything not because I want to take revenge on my family. I'm doing this because you deserve it. You showed me what true kindness, selfless love, humanity are. I want you to start a new life, the life you dreamed of. Open your own store, travel, fall in love again, be happy. You have a right to it." Alexandra sobbed. Quietly, but uncontrollably. All the words, all the emotions of the last years burst out along with the tears. Don't blame yourself for anything. Don't let them manipulate you. They will try, they will say that you are a liar, that you used me. Don't believe it. You are the most honest person I knew. And lastly, don't forgive Nikolai. He hasn't changed. He is incapable of changing. He will ask for forgiveness only for money. Live for yourself. You deserve it. Your father-in-law, who loved you like a daughter. Vladimir Petrovich Sokolov. The notary carefully folded the letter and put it in a folder. There was a deathly silence in the office, and then all hell broke loose. Victoria jumped up, her face contorted with rage. You did it on purpose, you staged it all, pretended to be a saint, but enough. Stop it yourself, the notary said firmly. Insults are unacceptable in my office. She deceived a sick old man, Elizaveta Sergeyevna screamed. Do you think I'll leave it like this? I'll find witnesses, prove that he was insane. Try it, Belov answered calmly. I have all the necessary documents, medical reports, testimony of witnesses, a video recording of the will being drawn up, where Vladimir Petrovich clearly explains his will. He was fully conscious and understood the consequences of his actions. Nikolai slowly turned to Alexandra. Something terrible blazed in his eyes. Have you been putting on a performance on purpose for these past 2 years? Alexandra wiped away her tears and looked her husband straight in the eyes for the first time in many years. I looked after your father because he was a good man, the only good man in your family. How dare you, the mother-in-law flared up. I didn't do anything. I didn't ask for it, Alexandra continued, her voice growing stronger. I didn't even know about the will. I only found out about it now, along with you. You're lying. Victoria pointed a finger in her direction. Of course she knew, that's why she stuck to the old man. Andryusha, can't you see? Shut up, Nikolai said wearily. What? Victoria stared at him. Are you telling me now? I said, shut up, he barked. There was a pause. Victoria slowly took a step back. Without my father's money, He stopped himself, but it was too late. What, Nikolai? Victoria's voice became thin. You don't have any money. You said you had your own business, that you were making money. There is a business, Nikolai muttered. But it's in debt, Elizaveta Sergeyevna blurted out. Andryusha took out loans, invested in various projects. They failed. We were hoping that Vladimir. Victoria clutched her stomach. Her face turned from white to green. So you were lying all this time? You said we would live in luxury. She started laughing hysterically. You would arrange everything, that your father was rich and after his death. Victoria, wait. Nikolai tried to take her hand, but she jerked away. Listen, we'll appeal the will, find good lawyers. With what money? Victoria screamed. You have no money, Nikolai. You're bankrupt, and I'm with you. She choked on sobs. I gave up everything. The groom was normal, he had money. And you promised. She grabbed her purse and, staggering, moved toward the door. Victoria, stop. Nikolai rushed after her. Don't you dare come near. She turned around on the threshold. Mascara and lipstick were running down her face, smeared. I'm not going to give birth to a beggar's child, do you hear me? I don't need you anymore. The door slammed. The sound of heels died down in the hallway. Nikolai stood in the middle of the office, destroyed. Elizaveta Sergeyevna was sobbing in the corner. Alexandra looked at them and felt neither pity nor malice, only emptiness. Nikolai turned to her. His voice trembled. Alexandraka, darling, forgive me, please. Don't, she said quietly. Forgive me. I was an idiot, I didn't appreciate you. But we've been together for so many years. 10, Alexandra nodded. 10 years you didn't need me. That's not true. I'm just confused. Midlife crisis. You understand. I understand. She stood up. Her legs were wobbly, but she held on. I understand that you never loved me. Alexandraka. And you know what? She looked into his eyes. Me too. I don't love you either. I guess I haven't loved you for 3 years now. I was just afraid to admit it to myself. We're a family, Alexandraka. Elizaveta Sergeyevna lifted her tear-stained face. Are you really going to throw us out on the street? The apartment is yours, Alexandra said. Yours and Nikolai's. It wasn't included in the will because it was privatized in your name. So you have a place to live. But the money, her mother-in-law started. 8 million. You understand, this is family money. Vladimir earned it for all of us. Vladimir Petrovich disposed of it as he saw fit, the notary said firmly. And this is his legal right. Alexandra, at least something. Nikolai fell to his knees. I beg you, I have debts, the creditors are threatening. I need at least 1 million. She looked at him, at this man who 10 years ago said he loved her. Who promised to be there, in sorrow and in joy, who was now on his knees not from love, but from despair. No, said Alexandra. What? No, not a penny. She stepped towards the door. Will you regret it? Elizaveta Sergeyevna howled. We will find a way, we will appeal, we will prove that you manipulated. Try. Alexandra turned around. Just remember, Vladimir Petrovich had foreseen everything. He was a very intelligent man, much smarter than you. She left the office, and the door softly closed behind her. Chapter 6. A New Beginning. Alexandra walked out of the notary's office and stopped on the porch. Her legs were shaking, her hands were shaking so much she could barely get her phone out of her bag. 8 million rubles. An apartment on Prechestenka, a house on Nikolina Gora, a business. It still seemed unreal, as if she were watching a movie about someone else's life. She sat down on a bench by the entrance and simply breathed. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. The December Moscow wind ruffled her hair, and she suddenly realized she didn't want to go back to that apartment on Kutuzovsky Prospect, where she lived for 10 years. I don't want to see the photographs on the walls, Nikolai's things in the closet, or the double bed where she'd long ago slept alone. My phone vibrated. A message from an unfamiliar number. Alexandra Mikhailovna, this is Notary Belov's assistant. Maxim Andreevich asked me to tell you that all the documents for the inheritance will be ready in a week. He also recommends contacting a lawyer for real estate and business transactions. If you need help, he can recommend trusted specialists. Alexandra looked at the message and suddenly burst into laughter. Hysterically, loudly, unable to stop. Passers-by on Tverskaya Street looked around, but she didn't care. She was laughing and crying at the same time and couldn't figure out what exactly she was feeling, relief, fear, joy, or all three. When the hysteria subsided, she wiped her face with the sleeve of her coat and dialed her friend's number. Evgenia, it's me. Can I come over? I need to talk. Evgenia Andreevna Lebedeva was the only one who didn't turn away from her. When the story with Nikolai and his mistress became public knowledge, everyone else, Alexandra's friends, somehow decided it was her own fault. They said she couldn't keep her husband, didn't take care of herself, and spent too much time with her father-in-law. Her friend lived on the other side of Moscow, in an old Khrushchev-era building on Sokol Street, which she renovated after her divorce. When Alexandra walked in, she was greeted by the smell of freshly brewed coffee and the marquise's cat, who immediately started rubbing against her legs. "Oh, my God, you're all white as a sheet." Evgenia sat her down on the sofa and thrust the cup into her hands. "What happened? How did the pronouncement go?" Alexandra told her everything, about her pregnant mistress at the notary's office, about the will, about Vladimir Petrovich's letter, about Victoria's hysteria, about Nikolai on his knees. Evgenia listened without interrupting, and when Alexandra finished, she simply hugged her and whispered, "He was a good man, your father-in-law, a rare one." "I don't know what to do," Alexandra admitted. 8 million, Genya, I've never held more than 50,000 in my hands. I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? That I can't handle it? That I'd waste it all? That," she hesitated, "they were right, that I really did take advantage of him? Listen to me." Evgenia took her hands. "You took care of a dying man for 2 years. You changed his sheets when he couldn't get up. You spoon-fed him. You read him books at night when he was in pain. You didn't do it for money. You weren't paid a penny. You did it from the bottom of your heart. And if he decided to thank you, that's his right. You didn't steal anything, you didn't cheat, you didn't manipulate. Forget about them. Forget about Nikolai and his mom and that girl. Think about yourself." Alexandra nodded, but inside she still doubted. Her whole life had been spent thinking about others, about her parents, then about her husband, about his family. Thinking about herself seemed selfish, wrong. "You know what?" Evgenia said, pouring more coffee. "Let's make a plan right now. What do you want to do first?" "Leave." Alexandra burst out. "Far away from this city. Start all over again." "Great. Where to?" "I don't know." She shrugged, confused. "As children, we used to visit my grandmother in the small town of Serebryany Prudy. It was so beautiful, so peaceful. I've always dreamed of living there. So, we're going there," Evgenia declared decisively. "What's the name of the town?" "Serebryany Prudy." "Wonderful. We'll start looking at houses there tomorrow." "Genya, are you serious?" Alexandra stared at her friend. "This is crazy. Drop everything and leave. What do you have to lose? You don't have a job. Your husband left. Your mother-in-law hates you. The apartment isn't yours. There's nothing holding you here. But you have money, the opportunity to start with a clean slate. How many people dream of this their whole lives?" Alexandra was silent. Something in her chest was loosening. The weight that had been crushing her for so many years was slowly receding. "A store," she said quietly. "I want to open a store with beautiful things for the home, textiles, dishes, decor. I've always dreamed of this." "Then you'll open it." Evgenia clapped her hands. "In the Silver Ponds. Imagine, a cozy little store on the main street. Tourists stop by, locals come by. They sat until night making plans." Evgenia drew on sheets of paper. She was drawing up diagrams, jotting down ideas, and Alexandra, for the first time in many years, felt something akin to hope. The next days flew by in chaos. Alexandra met with lawyers, drew up documents, and sold her share in her late father-in-law's business to his partners. They immediately agreed to buy it for 4 million rubles. Vladimir Petrovich was honest in his dealings. And his partners respected him, so they were understanding. Nikolai called every day. First he begged, then he threatened, then he begged again. Alexandra hung up. Elizaveta Sergeyevna waited for her at the entrance to a friend's house in Sokol, where Alexandra had moved temporarily until she left Moscow. "You've destroyed our family," her mother-in-law screamed. "My son will now be left on the street." "Your son is a grown man," Alexandra answered calmly. "He has an apartment and hands. Let him work. How dare you say that? He has loans. Those are his problems. I don't owe him anything. Alexandra was surprised at herself. Before, she would have burst into tears, agreed, given everything, just so they wouldn't quarrel, but now she felt a cold certainty. She reread Vladimir Petrovich's letter every evening, and each time the voice of doubt in her head grew quieter. She arrived at Serebryany Prudy on a rainy January morning. The town greeted her with the scent of the river and old chestnut trees. Here, time seemed to slow down. Narrow streets, two-story houses with carved window frames, a church on a hill. Tourists were rare. The majority of the population were locals, mostly retirees and families with children. The realtor showed her several options. Alexandra chose an apartment on the second floor of an old building in the very center. The windows overlooked the river and the bridge. The first floor was empty. It used to be a hair salon, but the owner closed it a year ago. Is this space available for sale? Alexandra asked. Naturally, the realtor perked up. Do you want it for a business, a store? The deal went through quickly. Alexandra bought the apartment and the space underneath for 3.5 million rubles. By Moscow standards, it was a paltry sum, but for the provinces, it was a substantial sum. She'd buy another million. She put aside money for renovations and purchasing supplies. The work began to boil. Alexandra hired a local team and chose tiles, wallpaper, and furniture herself. She went to wholesale warehouses in Ryazan, choosing textiles, dishes, and decor. Evgenia came on weekends to help. Together they painted the walls, hung shelves, and arranged the goods. You know, I don't recognize you, her friend said one evening as they sat on the floor among boxes of new purchases. You're all glowing. Alexandra smiled. It's true. I feel alive, as if I'd woken up after a long sleep. And Nikolai still calls. Not anymore. 2 weeks of silence. And how come you don't miss him? Alexandra wondered if she missed having breakfast together. They hadn't had that in 5 years. During conversations in the kitchen, Nikolai was always looking at his phone. Nearby. She had long ago forgotten the last time he'd hugged her just like that, for no reason. No, she answered honestly. I don't miss him at all. Strange, right? 10 years together, and I don't even miss him. Not strange, Evgenia shrugged. You can't miss what wasn't there. You were strangers for a long time. The store opened in February. Alexandra simply called it Comfort. She decorated the display case herself. Linen tablecloths, ceramic vases, candles, blankets, wooden cutting boards. Everything was chosen with taste and soul. The first customer was an elderly teacher, Antonina Vasilievna, who lived across the street. She bought a set of towels and was touched. Finally, our city had a proper store. Otherwise, everything was either through order online or drive to Ryazan. Then a young mother with 2 children arrived. Then a couple of tourists got lost on the way to the monastery. By evening, Alexandra had sold almost 20,000 rubles worth of goods. The days flowed smoothly and calmly. In the morning, Alexandra opened the store, brewed coffee in a small coffee maker she set up in the back, and greeted customers. Many came just to chat. In the provinces, a store was not only a place to shop but also a social hub. Alexandra learned local news, stories, and fates. Antonina Vasilievna talked about her former students. A young mother, Olga Sergeyevna, complained about her husband, who drank. Dmitry Igorevich, the owner of a nearby bookstore, would stop by for coffee and discuss the latest books. Life was getting better. Alexandra went to the market for groceries, cooked dinners for herself, and read or watched movies in the evenings. She strolled along the embankment, admired the sunsets, fed the ducks, and sometimes went to Ryazan to pick up new merchandise. The store was profitable, small but steady. Alexandra wasn't chasing after super profits. She was content with what she had. She put the remaining money in a savings account. Just in case, like a safety net. It was a snowy winter. Serebryany Prudy was buried in white drifts, and there were fewer tourists. But the local shoppers were still there. Alexandra decorated the window display for the New Year holidays. Fir branches, red candles, white linen napkins with embroidery. People stopped, took photos, and came in. On New Year's Eve, Olga Sergeyevna, that same young mother, came to see her. Alexandra Mikhailovna, thank you. She handed over a box of chocolates. You can't imagine how you've helped me. Alexandra was surprised. With what? With conversations. When I came to you, I complained about my husband. You didn't judge, didn't lecture, you just listened. And I realized that I didn't have to endure it. I filed for divorce. And how are you? I'm afraid, of course, Olga admitted. But, you know, it's easier, much easier than it was. I got a job. Mom helps with the kids. I can handle it. After she left, Alexandra stood by the window for a long time, looking at the falling snow. So her story helped someone else. So, that means everything. It wasn't in vain. She celebrated the New Year alone. Evgenia invited her to Moscow, but Alexandra declined. She wanted some quiet. She set a small table, lit candles, and poured a glass of wine. When the chime struck midnight, she raised her glass. To you, Vladimir Petrovich. Thank you. January brought surprises. One morning, as Alexandra was opening the store, an expensive foreign car pulled up to the door. A tall man of about 40 stepped out, wearing an expensive coat and walking confidently. Hello, he smiled. Are you Alexandra Mikhailovna? Yes, she answered cautiously. And you? My name is Georgy Alexandrovich Krulov. I'm a lawyer. We can talk. Alexandra's heart sank. So, they had decided to go to court after all. They went into the store. Georgy Alexandrovich looked around with interest. It's cozy here. Tasteful. Thank you. Alexandra clasped her hands. What did you want? Don't worry. He took a folder out of his briefcase. I'm not from your ex-husband. I represent the interests of the Stroymaster Company, the same one in which Vladimir Petrovich had a share. I already sold her share, Alexandra said quickly. I know, that's not the point. You see, before he died, Vladimir Petrovich asked me to take care of something, but he said to give you the information only 3 months after his death. That deadline has passed. He opened the folder and took out an envelope. One more letter, Alexandra whispered. You could say that. Vladimir Petrovich was a very prudent man. Alexandra opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a document and a short note in recognizable handwriting. Alexandra, if you're reading this, it's been 3 months. I hope you've calmed down, gotten used to being on top of things with money, and maybe even started something new. I want you to know there's another account, 2 million rubles. I opened it in your name 6 months before my death. No one knew about it. Neither the notary nor my family. This is my last gift to you. Spend it on something important to yourself, on education, on travel, on expanding your business. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that it makes you happier. You deserved it and even more. VP. Alexandra covered her face with her hands. Tears flowed through her fingers. Here are the account details, Georgy Alexandrovich said softly, and all the documents for access. Vladimir Petrovich cared about you very much. Why? Alexandra exhaled. Why did he do all this for me? The lawyer was silent, and then said, "You know, I worked with Vladimir Petrovich for more than 15 years. He was a tough businessman, not sentimental. But when we discussed the will, he told me, I have been surrounded all my life by people who wanted something from me, money, connections, help. And only one woman didn't ask for anything, she just stood by. You changed his view of people, Alexandra Mikhailovna, you gave him something money can't buy, genuine care." When the lawyer left, Alexandra closed the store for lunch and went to the river. She sat on her favorite bench, where she usually watched the sunrise, looked at the water and thought about the past. A year ago, she sat at the bedside of a dying man and had no idea that he would change her life. 6 months ago, she was still married to Nikolai. She endured coldness, insults, betrayals. 3 months ago, she stood in a notary's office and couldn't believe her ears. And now she sat here, in a small provincial town, and was truly happy, for the first time in many years. In the evening, when it got dark, the doorbell rang. Alexandra looked up from the documents and froze. Nikolai stood in the doorway. He looked terrible. His expensive coat was wrinkled, there were bruises under his eyes, he was unshaven. Nikolai, who always took care of himself before, a man with a pedantic manner, who could spend half an hour choosing a shirt, stood in front of her looking like a homeless person. "Hello," he said hoarsely. Alexandra looked at her ex-husband in silence. No heartbeat, no pity. Only fatigue. "How did you find me?" "Hired a private detective." He tried to smile, but it came out pitiful. "Spent the last of his money." "Can I come in?" "No. Alexandra, please, I need to talk. Just 5 minutes." She looked at her watch. There were 20 minutes left until closing. More customers weren't expected. 3 minutes. "Speak here." Nikolai crossed the threshold and looked around. "Wow. You did all this yourself?" "Myself. 2 minutes 40 seconds. He flinched at her cold tone. "Listen, I understand you're angry, you have the right to. I was a complete idiot. But, Alexandraka, I realized. I realized everything. Victoria left the day after the will was read, had an abortion and disappeared. Mother now blames me for everything and won't talk. The business collapsed completely, the creditors are getting on my nerves. I lost everything and decided to come back to me." Alexandra finished for him. "No, that is, yes, but not for that reason." He stepped closer. "I realized that you were the only real one in my life. The only one who really—" "Stop." Alexandra raised her hand. "Let's not do this. You didn't come because you understood. You came because you were left with nothing. If Victoria hadn't left, if you had gotten my father's money, you wouldn't even have remembered I existed. That's not true. Nikolai, don't lie at least now. Not to yourself, not to me. We both know the truth." He lowered his head. "Okay, maybe. You're right, but I really realized my mistakes. I want to fix everything. Give me a chance. We can start over." "I've changed in 3 months, Alexandra chuckled. "People don't change in 3 months, Nikolai. Especially at your age. They change if they lose everything. No, they just start playing differently. Before, you played a successful businessman with a mistress. Now you play a repentant husband. But it's all an act." He looked at her, and incomprehension was visible in his eyes. He didn't recognize this woman. Where was the quiet, submissive Alexandra, who always agreed, always forgave? "You've really changed," he muttered. "No, I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. Alexandra, I'm begging you on my knees, give me at least a little money. I need to pay off my debts. If I don't pay, they'll put me in jail." "Then they will," she finished calmly. It's your responsibility, Nikolai. You took out loans, you invested in dubious projects. You failed, not me. But you have money, 8 million. Don't you feel sorry for it? I don't feel sorry, Alexandra said firmly. This money was left to me by a man who believed in me, who wanted me to be happy. I'm not going to spend it on your debts. You're heartless, Nikolai suddenly exploded. I supported you for 10 years, provided for you, and you can't help in difficult times. Supported. Alexandra laughed, and this laugh was harsh. Nikolai, I worked. I worked our entire marriage. We split the money for everything, rent, food, vacations. You gave me nothing. And the last 2 years, while I was caring for your father, you didn't even give me a penny for groceries for him. I bought everything with my savings. But I was the head of the family. You were selfish and a traitor. And now you're the same, only before you cheated with Victoria, and now you're trying to manipulate me. He stood there, breathing heavily. And Alexandra suddenly realized, he hadn't changed at all. Even now, in this situation, he thought only of himself. He never once truly apologized, never once asked how she was, how she had gotten over the betrayal. Listen, he tried to take a different tone, soft. Okay, I was wrong. I admit it. Let's do it this way. Give me 300,000, just a little. I'll pay off the most urgent debts, get back on my feet, and then I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back honestly. No. 100,000, well, at least 50. No. Alexandra opened the door. Go away, Nikolai. Go back to Moscow. Solve your problems yourself. I'm not leaving. He grabbed her hand. You have to help me. You have to. Alexandra pulled her hand away, and at that moment something entered her. Strength, rage, everything she'd been saving up for years. I don't owe you anything, she screamed. And her voice rang out in the silence of the store. Do you understand? I gave you my all for 10 years. I ironed your shirts, cooked your favorite dishes, tolerated your mother, who humiliated me at every meeting. I turned a blind eye to your late hours at work, to the smell of other people's perfume, to the coldness in bed. I was dying of loneliness in our apartment, and you fucked your mistress and made plans for the future without me. Nikolai turned pale. Alexandra never screamed, never swore. I took care of your dying father for 2 years, and you didn't even bother to visit him. I held his hand when he was in pain. I read to him, fed him, washed him. And you know what? These 2 years were happier than all the 10 years with you, because at least someone saw me as a person, and not a servant. Alexandra, shut up. I'm not finished yet. She took a step towards him, and he retreated. You didn't come here for forgiveness. You came for money. You never loved me. I was convenient. I didn't mind your friends, your hobbies, your lifestyle. I was inconspicuous, convenient, a proper wife, and when you found a brighter toy, you threw me out like old furniture. I don't. And you know what's funniest? Alexandra laughed through her tears. I'm grateful to you. Seriously, if it weren't for your betrayal, I would have lived my whole life in this cage. I would have endured, kept silent, pretended to be happy. And now I'm finally living for real. And I'm fine, you know? I'm fine without you. Silence. Nikolai stood with his mouth open, and Alexandra wiped away her tears and felt herself getting lighter with every second, as if she had thrown off a huge burden. Go away, she said quietly. Don't come anymore, don't call, don't look for me. We have nothing in common anymore. You'll regret it, he whispered. You'll grow old alone, die in this hole, and no one will even notice. Perhaps, Alexandra nodded, but I will live this life by my choice, not yours. He turned and left, slamming the door so hard that the glass rattled. Alexandra sank into a chair and sat until the trembling subsided. Then she got up, closed the store, and went up to her apartment. She made some tea and sat by the window, at the city lights, and smiled. For the first time in years, she told Nikolai everything she thought. She didn't remain silent, didn't swallow her resentment, didn't pretend everything was fine. She told the truth, and it was liberating. In the morning, Alexandra woke up with a light heart. She took a shower, got dressed, and went down to the store. The day promised to be ordinary. A few customers, inventory control, ordering a new batch from the supplier. Antonina Vasilievna came in at lunchtime. Alexandra Mikhailovna, my dear, I wanted to ask you something. It's so cozy here, such an atmosphere. Have you by any chance thought about holding master classes? On what? Well, yes, on decor, table setting, maybe some handicrafts. The young people in our city don't know anything at all, but you could teach them. For money, of course. Alexandra thought about it. The idea seemed interesting. You know, Antonina Vasilievna, I'll think about it. Thanks for the advice. That evening, she searched for information online. It turned out that such master classes are very popular in small towns. People want to learn, socialize, and create something with their own hands. Alexandra made a plan. Once a week on Saturdays, she would hold classes, table setting, making decorative wreaths, painting ceramics, and textile crafts. She would purchase the necessary materials and prepare a program. She scheduled the first class for the end of February, posted notices around the city, and posted information in local social media groups. 12 people signed up, and it was a success. Saturday was frosty but sunny. The participants showed up on time. Women from 20 to 60 years old. Alexandra was nervous, but when she started talking, the anxiety passed. She showed how to properly combine colors in table settings, how to fold napkins, how to arrange candles and flowers. The main thing is not to be afraid to experiment, she said. Your home is your space. No rules are more important than your comfort and pleasure. The women listened, asked questions, laughed. After the master class, they didn't want to leave, they sat, drank tea, and chatted. Alexandra understood that people missed lively interaction and warm atmosphere. Will you hold more meetings like this? Asked one of the participants, a young woman of about 25. Absolutely, Alexandra promised. Every Saturday. March brought the first signs of spring. The snow melted, streams ran through the streets, the store operated reliably, and the workshops attracted ever-increasing numbers of participants. Alexandra expanded her selection, adding handmade goods from local artisans, ceramics, and knitwear. One day, Dmitry Igorevich, the owner of the bookstore, came into the store. Alexandra Mikhailovna, I have a proposal for you, let's team up. Not in a business sense, but in a cultural one. You conduct master classes, and I can organize literary evenings. We can alternate, or even combine them. A book club with handicrafts, for example. Alexandra thought the idea was wonderful. They agreed and held their first joint meeting in April. A discussion of the novel and the creation of bookmarks were held simultaneously. 20 people came. The city seemed to come alive with spring. Alexandra began to make new contacts and connections. Locals greeted her on the street, just dropped in for tea. She became part of this small community. In May, Evgenia called. How are you? Do you miss the capital? No, Alexandra answered honestly. At all. You know, I think I've finally found my place. I'm so happy for you. Listen, do you remember our conversation about wanting to study interior design? I think I do, but it was so long ago. 2 million from Vladimir Petrovich, remember? Spend it on your education. Seriously? Find good online courses, study. You have talent, I see it in the photos of your store. Develop it. Alexandra thought. Why not? She found courses on interior design and decorating. She enrolled. In the evenings after the store closed, she watched lectures and completed assignments. It was fascinating. Summer flew by. The tourist season brought in additional profits. Alexandra slightly changed the concept of the store, adding handmade souvenirs, postcards with city views, and works by local artists. In August, she suddenly caught herself thinking, I'm happy, truly, deeply happy. Not because she has money or a successful business, but because she's doing what she loves, living where she wants, and associating with people she likes. She no longer thought about Nikolai or her past life. It was like a bad dream from which she had finally awakened. In September, when golden autumn had blanketed the city, Alexandra was standing by a shop window, hanging up new embroidered linen napkins. A man approached the door, tall, bespectacled, with a pleasant face. Good afternoon, he said. Can I come in? Of course, Alexandra smiled. He walked around the store, carefully examining the goods. Do you choose everything yourself? Yes. And what do you feel? There is soul here. My name is Konstantin. I'm an architect. I recently moved here from Moscow. Tired of the hustle and bustle. I rented a house by the river and am decorating it. I think I'll have to buy half the store from you. He laughed. They got to talking. Konstantin Pavlovich told her that he had worked all his life for a large company. He designed shopping centers and office buildings, but then he realized he wanted to do something real, something soulful, to restore old houses and create cozy spaces. I understand you, Alexandra said. I also fled Moscow and never regretted it. They talked for over an hour. Konstantin bought blankets, dishes, a few decorative pillows, and promised to stop by again. And he did. At first, once a week, then more often. They drank coffee, talked about life, dreams, and books. Alexandra found that she felt at ease and comfortable with this man. No pressure, no games, just good company. One evening in October, when the store was already closed, Konstantin lingered for tea. Alexandra, he said, I know we haven't known each other that long, but I feel really good with you, and I'd like, well, can I take you on a real date? Not just to the store, but to go somewhere. To a restaurant, for example. Alexandra looked at him, at his sincere eyes. He gave her an embarrassed smile and suddenly realized she's ready. Ready to try again. Not because she's looking for someone to replace the past, but because she's open to something new. With pleasure, she replied. They began dating slowly, unhurriedly, getting to know each other for real. Konstantin was attentive, caring, respectful of her boundaries and desires. Alexandra blossomed with each passing day. In November, exactly 1 year after the store opened, she threw a small celebration, invited regular customers, masterclass participants, neighbors, set the table, decorated the room. I want to say thank you, she addressed the guests. You have welcomed me here, in your city, made me a part of your life. I have found here not just a home, I have found myself. Antonina Vasilievna burst into tears. Alexandra Mikhailovna, my dear, it was you who gave us this island of comfort. Thank you. Alexandra looked at these people, so different, but who had become family, and understood that her life had turned out exactly as it should have. All the blows, all the pain, all the losses had brought her here, to this happiness that she had built herself. In the evening, when the guests had left, Konstantin helped clear the table. You know, he said, I'm really glad I found your store back then, in September. Me too, Alexandra smiled. He hugged her, and she snuggled into him, feeling warmth and peace. No promises for the future, no vows. Just this moment, this happiness. Alexandra closed her eyes and mentally said, Thank you, Vladimir Petrovich, for everything, for believing in me, for the chance to start anew. I didn't let you down, I'm happy." And somewhere there, in the unknown, she felt he heard and was happy for her. December brought the first snow and an unexpected meeting. Alexandra was unpacking boxes of New Year's decorations when a woman of about 50 entered the store, elegant, wearing an expensive fur coat. "Good afternoon. You are Alexandra Mikhailovna Sokolova." "Yes." Alexandra straightened up, peering at the stranger. "My name is Tatyana Dmitrievna Volkova. I was a close friend of Vladimir Petrovich. May I talk to you?" They sat down at a table in the corner of the store. Tatyana Dmitrievna took a photograph out of her bag. Young Vladimir Petrovich with a girl. "It's me," she said quietly. 40 years ago. We loved each other, but his parents were against it. I was from a simple family, and he was from a rich one. He was forced to marry Elizaveta. We separated, but we corresponded all our lives, met occasionally, just talked. Alexandra was silent, not knowing what to say. The last 6 months of his life, we saw each other often. He talked about you, about how you courted him, how you read to him, how you sat with him. Do you know what he told me? "Tatyana, I spent my whole life with the wrong woman. But at least in the end, fate gave me the gift of meeting a person who showed me what a real family should be." Tears streamed down Alexandra's cheeks. "He asked me to find you a year after his death and give this." Tatyana held out a small box. Inside was an antique pendant, silver with an engraving. It belonged to his mother. The only family heirloom he truly valued. He wanted it to go to you, not to Elizaveta, not to some future wife of his son, to you, because you have become his daughter. Alexandra squeezed the pendant in her palm, feeling its warmth. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for coming." After Tatyana Dmitrievna left, Alexandra sat for a long time, looking at the pendant. On the back was engraved the inscription, "Live for yourself." The winter passed in worries and joys. Alexandra completed her interior design courses with honors. Her thesis, a design for a small café, received high marks from teachers. Constantine proposed a joint project with her. He would restore an old merchant's house in the city center, and she would design its interior. Alexandra enthusiastically agreed. The store flourished. She hired an assistant, a young woman named Maria Alexandrovna, who dreamed of starting her own business and learned all the intricacies from Alexandra. In March, a year and a half after moving to Serebryany Prudy, Alexandra received a letter from the notary Belov. "Dear Alexandra Mikhailovna, I consider it my duty to inform you that Nikolai Vladimirovich Sokolov has been declared bankrupt. His ex-wife, Elizaveta Sergeyevna, sold her apartment on Kutuzovsky Prospect and moved in with her sister in Tver. Nikolai Vladimirovich works as a manager in a construction company. Attempts to challenge the will were abandoned a year ago due to a lack of grounds and lack of funds for lawyers. I inform you that this is not to arouse any feelings in you, but solely for your peace of mind. They will no longer bother you. Sincerely, Belov." Alexandra folded the letter and placed it in the desk drawer. No pity, no gloating. Just a statement of fact. That life was left behind, in another reality. That evening, Constantine came with a bouquet of tulips. "I have news. I've been offered a big project. Restoring an estate near Ryazan. At least a year's work. I thought maybe we could." He hesitated. "I want to say that I love you, Alexandra, and I'd like you to be close. We don't have to move in together right away or anything. Just know that I'm serious." Alexandra looked at the man. Kind, honest, who didn't demand the impossible from her, who accepted her as she was. "I love you too," she said. "And yes, I want to be close." They hugged, and Alexandra felt it. It was right. It was her choice, her decision, her happiness. 3 years later, Alexandra stood on the porch of a restored merchant's house and admired the sign. Interior Design Studio Yut. The store on the ground floor was now run by Maria, and Alexandra herself was engaged in design projects. Constantine stood next to her, hugging her shoulder. They got married a year ago. Quietly, a small ceremony, only the closest friends. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Very happy," Alexandra smiled. Evgenia, who had come from Moscow for the studio opening, ran out of the house. "Alexandra. There's already a line of clients. 3 orders for design projects." Alexandra laughed. The life she had built herself, the life she had dreamed of, it was here, now, real. In the evening, when the guests had left, she took Vladimir Petrovich's pendant out of the box and put it on her neck. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. A happy woman with clear eyes, confident, free. "Live for yourself," she whispered, reading the engraving, and smiled. She was truly living, finally. If you liked this story, subscribe to stay up to date with new heartfelt stories and leave a comment. I'm always interested in your opinion.